Hey there fellow creators, Ben here from Cinderblock Studios, and for a long time people have been requesting that I do a video about how to repair a hole or a tear in canvas. My excuse to all this has always been, I'm not going to make a painting and then purposely rip it, that's stupid. But I just finished a painting, I was working on wiring it, and I put a tiny little hole in it, and now this beautiful brand new painting has a hole in it. So let's work on fixing that today, shall we? Stick around. So for this tutorial, you're going to need a couple of things that are probably a little bit non-standard. First and probably the most important is some loose canvas. Because I stretch my own canvas at the end of a roll or at the end of a fold, there's often a little piece left over. I never throw these away because you never know when you're going to need one, and this is a perfect example of why you're going to need some extra canvas. Now if you don't stretch your own canvas, and you don't have any folds lying around, if you happen to be on a piece of canvas that has the back staple, you can cut a little bit of this excess canvas here and use that, as long as your rip isn't that big. Additionally, I'm going to be using some gel mediums today. I've got some regular gel matte as well as some hard molding paste. Actually, it's not a gel medium, it's a paste. I might grab one or two of the other ones. I just need to make sure I have a nice secure bond to that canvas. You're going to need a brush, recommended for me, probably a flat brush. And then you're going to eventually need some paint colors to match what you did in the front. Luckily, because I just finished this, I've got some dried stuff off to the side, so I already know what colors I used. If you're doing this on a painting that you did years ago, you might have some trouble remixing your colors if that's something you struggle with in the first place. But for the time being, let's go ahead and get the back side of this repaired, and then we'll worry about the front. Okay, so a little closer in here. It's kind of hard to see with the peg here, but I was tightening this little section trying to wire this canvas, and I just poked a hole right through that. So not a huge deal, it's relatively small, going to be a relatively easy fix. Just it's going to be about color matching the front of that. Also, you noticed I kind of had a little necklace thing going on. I'm half dressed for church right now, so I got to really be careful not to get any of this on my clothes. So to start things off, I just want to attempt to re-steel that as the best that I can. So I think I actually want to start with a bit of Golden's GAC 100, which is sort of an acrylic primer and extender. Squeeze a little bit of that down. I actually have a little bit of room on a palette off to the side here. And I just want to basically prep the back of this a little bit, because this is raw canvas on this side anyway. And that shouldn't take more than a minute or so to dry. The problem when you rip a canvas is that you literally pulled apart the fibers, or at least I did in this case, which makes things a little bit difficult to actually then repair, because you can't reweave the fibers unless you sit there with a needle, which would be a little impractical. Now, in order to get the canvas to really sit and be more repaired, I'm going to get a little square of this canvas and apply it down to that specific section with some of the gel. So I don't need a ton, but I also want to make sure I keep these frays out of it as well. So I'm just going to get a little tiny square of this. Okay, that's going to have to be good enough. So I want to get a good bit of this gel down. This is a nice thick viscosity, so should be able to plaster a good bit on here. But I don't want to buckle the canvas from underneath, so I got to be kind of careful about that. Just want to make sure there's enough of it. And that little piece of canvas will go down on top of the gel. And then we're going to put more of that gel right back on top of it, but just on the edges, I would say. And because I'm using a thicker gel, I'm going to be able to really push down on those fibers that I left sit, and be able to keep them down considerably. Yeah, put a little bit on top, but not a ton. Alright. So, from the front, now we have a nice solid seal to that. as you see here, and you just have a little bit of that gel kind of bleeding through. Now when we have to really let this dry and make sure that it is indeed dry before we paint over top of that, which is why I did this before church, not after, so I can kind of give it the time to dry and solidify. So that's all I need for the time being. I'm going to rinse my brush, and I will be back probably about an hour or two, be about 3 seconds for you guys, to tackle the rest of this once it dries. Okay, so my canvas now has a wire on it. This is just about dry, and I'm back in my painting pants where I belong. I want to give this a little extra of just work on the edge, a little extra medium here, and for that I'm going to grab actually some hard molding paste. It's got a lot stiffer of a texture to it once it dries, and that's just going to give me a little extra security. But generally speaking, I'm pretty much fine. I could probably let it go or just give it another coat of the matte gel. But since I have this stuff, I want to give it just a little extra security, basically. And this is going to be a little bit of a white color, just with the component of the paste. But again, this is the back, so it's not a huge deal. I just kind of want to smooth that out. And I'm really just going to focus that to the edges. Applying that with a knife, keeping it thick. And that should be just fine. Okay. So now we're going to flip this to the front to where we can actually see what we have to work with. So tiny little hole. I got really lucky. It's actually upside down, but I got really lucky that this happened right on an area that was kind of in the shadow. So for that reason, I don't actually have to do a ton of remixing or a ton of extra detailing. If I did, if it was actually sort of in this section over here, which is a lot more detailed, would have been a little more of an issue. So I actually have to move the camera. I want to flip this over. I also tossed a little bit more of that matte gel just on the front to kind of fill the little bit of a hole that was there. Okay, so again, at this point, it's really just about matching that color back up. Should be pretty easy here. I had all my colors out to the side. Most of my main colors here for this were Mars Black, Viridian Green, Sap Green, and some of the Golden Open Benzimidazzolone Yellow Light. But I shouldn't need a whole hell of a lot of that, just to kind of get that back to where it was. And in this case, I'm using a relatively small brush because I don't want to damage sort of the detail and the integrity of the piece. I just want to kind of make sure the paint and the color and everything still kind of comes together nicely. And you just kind of cover it right back up. Like so. I actually want to get a little bit of white into here. Pretty sure I was using my titanium buff to lighten that. Not a ton, just a little. Really kind of work on color matching that back to where it was. Sometimes you might have to modify things a little bit just to keep that surface a little more uniform. That's not bad. I think my final layer to that was actually a bit of my Indian yellow. I'm just going to grab a little of that out of the cap. Because I did a glaze with that right at the very end, just to get a little more richness in the color. I think that will just water it down a bunch. Made sure I used that pretty sparingly, because I didn't want to totally taint the color of the canvas itself. So that's really about it. I mean, it's just about kind of getting it right back to where you wanted it, because that was still a relatively small little hole. That's going to be pretty much invisible at this point. I mean, I'll know it's there, it'll drive me nuts for the rest of my life, but as far as anyone seeing that from a distance, I don't think anyone's really going to be able to tell. So that's really all it takes. Alright, and now that that's dry, and you can't even tell it was there, the last thing left for me to do is just give it sort of a recoat of my gloss sealer. I put this on every single one of my paintings, primarily just to unify surface sheen. And since that little section's now probably a little shiny, or maybe a little, actually probably a little bit more matte, going over it one more time is just not going to hurt. And just like that, we go right back to where it was before. From a distance, you're never going to be able to tell that that hole is there. The only way you're really going to be able to tell is to flip it over and see the patch on the back. And it's really that simple. It just kind of keeps some extra canvas around. Make sure that, you know, you're kind of keeping up on being able to match and rematch your colors. If you're not good at doing that, maybe get some practice in. And yeah, as long as it's not a super big rip, you should be able to patch it with pretty much no time at all. I mean, I did that in really however long the video was. I mean, it took some time for the gel to dry, but in the grand scheme of things, pretty easy to patch little pieces like that. Now if we're talking a big slice across the front, probably a little more tricky. Going to need a little bit more canvas, and it probably won't really look that fantastic in the long run. Specifically because that'll be a large portion of the painting you basically have to paint over and redo. But for just a little rip here and there, can't really go wrong. So, for more tips, tutorials, and other videos like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel. And this has been from Snipit Studios, and I will see you guys next time.